cave at Leeds Golf Club to do the equipment test that I've probably been the most excited to do all season, and that is the Ping G425 hybrids. Now, I've had Ping hybrids in my bag all my life, they're some of my favourite clubs to use, so as soon as these arrived I was super excited to get testing them and see just how they compare to the G410s that I had in my bag last season. So first up I'm going to start with the new G425, and I'm really excited to get the data on this because it's just such a great looking golf club. So I've got exactly the same shaft setup here as I do in last year's models, and you might think no you don't because it looks different, but it is just the new updated model. This is one of the Ping owned shafts, so it's the Alta CB, and I have to say I really love the new look to this. So an important thing to note here is, although the head tech has been upgraded, so has the shaft technology, so we are going to see some changes through that as well. Nice little draw, I'll take that. Caught that slightly off the toe, but very consistent in terms of shot shape so far. I have to say this has been incredibly consistent so far. I can't get over just how good this golf club looks. I mean, my favourite club ever was my i10 hybrid from Ping, and I love the way it's almost gone back to that classic shaping they had then, especially without the turbulators and the smoothness on the top. It just sits so nice behind the ball, and I do really love that 3-dot alignment system as well. But I have to say I think the big change visually is this new Ping shaft, which is matched into the club head perfectly, so it just sits so well behind the ball as a whole. I think literally every single one of these has landed on the green, which is pretty remarkable. It's probably my worst strike yet, and it's still landed on the green. Can I put this in my golf bag right now, please? So I hit a few extra shots there by accident. I just got a bit carried away because I was enjoying hitting it so much. So I've actually got 14 shots worth of data here, but they're all pretty similar, so I think I'm just going to keep it like that. Now in my setup I carry a 4 hybrid, a 3 hybrid and then a 3 wood. Now my 4 hybrid I like to have it set up to go about 180, and my 3 wood typically goes about 210. So for me this 3 hybrid needs to sit somewhere in the middle, and in the data it did that perfectly, and it ended up averaging out at 198 yards on carry. So pretty much exactly where I'd want it. In terms of front to back ratios, my shortest carry was at 195 and my longest was up at 204, so not massive, and in terms of being 200 yards away, I think that's pretty good in terms of front to back distance. Now I was also really happy with my dispersion here. All of my shots landed on the green when we were doing it through the range feature here, but then when we look into the data I had 2 that my worst shots were to the left that finished 17 yards left, so that's going to average out about 50 feet. But all the rest of them were inside 35 feet of the pin, which I think out on the course I would be very happy with. So definitely really good in terms of dispersion and consistency. And on that note, I also found the ball flight to be really consistent. I was hitting a really nice little draw shape, and I had a really consistent flight and height throughout my testing. So to be honest, at this point I'm really impressed with the performance, and to top it off I just love the way these look and feel. But let's go back, hit last year's model and check to see if these are going in my bag or not. Right, I've got the G410 here now. This is set up exactly the same, so we've got a 19-degree head, which is a 3 hybrid, and it's got the Alta CB shaft. It's 70 grams and it's a stiff. Now, I always liked the way these looked over the ball. I think they're very comforting. I also think the turbulators do add something in terms of the alignment and getting the ball in the centre of the face, but I just can't get over how much better the new models look. This isn't a bad looking club, but they've just done such a great job of upgrading it for this year. Say this still feels great, and I've always loved the feel of the Ping hybrids whenever I've used them. I still feel like I'm striking these pretty good, but they don't look like they're going quite as far. definitely a lot more inconsistent in terms of height. I'm getting a lot of these that are launching quite high, definitely excessively so, but then some that are coming in quite a bit lower as well. Okay, I'm going to remember to actually stop after 10 shots this time. Okay, that was actually super interesting because there was a lot more differences between the two than I thought initially there might be. This was spinning 1,000 RPM more, and you could definitely see that in the flight as well. A lot of them were flying a lot higher, but then I did have a few that were quite low as well, so in terms of ball flight it was definitely more inconsistent. Now both had pretty identical ball speed numbers, but because the spin was so much higher than this, I was losing a lot more distance. This averaged out at 191 yards compared to 199 that we saw with the G425, so 8 yards shorter. But probably the biggest issue here was the fact that the front to back dispersion was so much bigger. My shortest shot was at 181 and my longest shot was at 199. So nearly a 20 yards difference. So this was twice as worse in terms of front to back dispersion as we saw with the new offering. So with a hybrid, typically that's what you're going to be using to hit into greens. So really it's an area where you're wanting that tighter dispersion. So Ping have definitely provided that in the upgraded model this year. I'm also really impressed with that increase in distance because last year I didn't really find there was a massive difference between my 4 and my 3 hybrid. And sometimes I felt like I could almost be carrying one club and there wasn't a massive advantage to pulling my 3 hybrid out of my 4. With this we've got a lot more distance, there's definitely going to be a bigger gap and that better gapping that I want throughout my set. Right, let's drop back down to the 4 hybrids now and check out that gapping. Now this is a 22-degree hybrid, but last year to get this at the 180 gap that I wanted in my bag, I actually had to set the loft down. I don't think I'm going to have to do that this year, so I'm going to try it in the standard offering first. Striking this really nicely as well. Okay, I'm pretty sure they've flown more than 180, but let's go take a look at the numbers. Right, so that averaged out at 190 carry, so a lot further than I would have expected. Definitely probably going to be a lot further than the G410. I mean, I think that's definitely the best way to be going because you've got so many ways you can adjust this. You can quite easily put the loft up a little bit, so if I want this to fly exactly 185 or 180, I can dial it back. But you need to be able to get that ball speed and that distance in the first place to be able to dial it back a little bit. Again, in terms of front to back dispersion, I was pretty happy with this. My shortest shot was down at 183 and my longest was up at 195. So not too dissimilar to the kind of numbers we saw with the 3 hybrid. Now let's go hit the G410 and see what the differences are. That went so high. I always thought this flew high before, but now I've cranked the loft back to neutral, it's noticeable just how high it actually does fly. I feel like I'm striking these really nicely though. The new hybrid actually looks so different behind the ball. I think if you picked it up initially, you might not even realise it was a Ping club. So to be honest, that performed pretty much as I would have expected to, although it did fly a little bit longer than I thought. This averaged out at 185 yards compared to the 190 we saw with the G425. Now in terms of front to back dispersion, it was pretty similar as well. My shortest shot was down at 180 and my longest shot was up at 192. But the big difference here was in terms of launch and height. This was flying noticeably higher, so we had a higher peak height and a higher launch angle, which also meant we did have a bit of a steeper descent angle, which is going to help it land in soft, but naturally that's going to come with that higher ball flight. Now the spin here went up to 4,700, which was actually 500 RPM more than we saw in the new G425 model. Finally, we could also see the dispersion was just a little bit tighter with the new G425 model compared to this. I have to say I'm pretty surprised just how well these performed. On the face of it, when you look at these compared to last year's offerings, the tech doesn't look massively different. They've got pretty similar shape-ins, but these performed so much better, not only in terms of distance, but also in terms of dispersion. Now for me, a key thing I liked was the fact that the spin was a bit lower and the launch was a bit lower, because sometimes I find with hybrids, I can get them going too high and then they get stuck up in the wind, which is not really what you want. But aside to that, I was really impressed with the improvements in distance, and I especially like that with that 3 hybrid it's going to go a bit further, which I feel like I could attack par 5s with more. Now aside from performance, I just love the way these look. I think Ping have absolutely nailed the aesthetics of this year, and hopefully that's going to bring more people out to try these. Hybrids are one of my favourite clubs to test and play with, and I always have at least 2 in my bag. Now, I've never not used a Ping club in my life, and I don't think that's set to change in 2021. These are going straight in the bag this year. Right, that's all for this week. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on. And if you're after more golf content, head to the National Club Golfer social media channels for more.